Next, there will be presentation of the team Anchor Spirit with the title Amendment to STCW, Integration of Radio Communication Function into the Capacity of Deck Officer. Please welcome team Anchor Spirit.
Attention, stop.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are Team Anchor Spirit and will present Amendment to STCW, the integration of radio communication function into the capacity of deck officer. Or, our topic can be a simple question. Why shall radio communication be included as a function of deck officers? Our presentation is comprised of 3 parts. First, I'm going to explain about the necessity. Then comes expected effects, and finally, amendment strategy. What do you see from this slide? These are the 3 functions of deck officers regulated under STCW convention. In the past, radio communication was conducted in a separate room called radio room by the independent rank of an officer called radio officer. They used to use Morse code. However, after the adoption of GMDSS using maritime satellite, the duty officer is now able to run radio communication as a part of their daily routine jobs, all together in bridge. This leads to a next point regarding the law and the practice. Right now, the law remains in the old days where radio officers used to operate radio communication. In the field now, however, the actual radio communication is run by officers in charge of navigational watch, or OONW. This, in fact, created a discrepancy between the law and the practice, highlighting the necessity of the proposal. According to the statistics from Korea Seafarers Welfare and Employment Center, the number of deck officers is gradually increasing. They've always taken the large proportion among the officers. On the other hand, however, the number of radio officers are dramatically decreasing because the concept of radio officer has become obsolete, just like outdated technology Morse code. In Republic of Korea, only 3 radio officers are remaining as of end of 2016, and global statistics, it's nowhere to be found regarding radio officer. Furthermore, according to Radio Officers Association, a global organization of radio officer formed in 1995, stated that the rank of radio officer had passed into history. Moreover, institutions no longer provide training courses solely for dedicated radio officers anymore. It's been demolished or altered into community colleges. Let's take a look at the regulation in SOLAS Chapter 4, Radio Communication. It is stated that the ship must maintain a continuous watch using right frequency for safety information, and lastly, to keep a continuous listening watch on VHF channel 16 while at sea. Guess who keep these watches on the bridge these days? Officers in charge of navigational watch. Besides, from Regulation 17 radio records, it requires that the records shall be kept. In the field, both deck logbook and radio logbook are kept in bridge. And who keep these records of their watch? Now you will know the answer now. The duty officers. Additionally, GMDSS equipment such as VHF, MFHF, NAVTEX, and etc. are also located in bridge like this. Moving on, STCW convention stipulates the standards for certifying duty officers, and it's called Certificate of Competency. However, the candidates additionally need General Operator Certificate or Restricted Operator Certificate. Why? Here's the answer. because there are two independent, different regulations regarding such certifications. COC, as you can see, is under STCW convention, and GOC and ROC is also under STCW. However, it also includes radio regulations. This clearly shows inefficiency. As in for Republic of Korea, there are at least 4 tests to take to be certified duty officer, like 2 written tests, practical test, and oral test. This proves the inefficiency and loss for both candidates and administrative authorities in time and costs. Candidates spend longer time taking, more fees to apply for such examinations. In the case of administrative authorities, they also need to spend to prepare such examinations more manpower and following labor costs. How ironic is it when one of duty officers' responsibility is to operate vessel efficiently? The necessity and importance of communication between ships and shore are increasing as the digitalization of ship information systems, such as e-navigation. In accordance with such technological innovation, radio communication should be considered to be a part of function of a deck officer, since without a doubt, communication on board are carried out by deck officers. These were the necessity of our proposal. Without a further ado, we'll move on to expected effects.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's such an honor to stand in front of you. So, let's look into the expected effects. Every change should be beneficial, right? So what can we get from this change? First, is an up-to-date regulation. IMO regulates STCW convention along with SOLAS and MARPO convention as its key convention. And it is important that we make everything from these key conventions as clear as day and make no confusion and discrepancy out of it. And we strongly think that this part of the convention is clearly outdated. And through the change, we look forward to making a fresh and updated version of the STCW convention. Next is an efficient certification system. Candidates who are willing to become a deck officer will only have to go through a single examination to become a deck officer, just like the engineer officers. Both the candidates and the administrative authorities will benefit and save time and labor, plus the money spent for hosting and applying for the examination. The next is perhaps the most important. This contributes to ship safety. According to SOLAS Convention, the master of a ship which is in a position to be able to provide assistance upon receiving information that people are in distress is to proceed with all speed to their assistance. However, in the field, officers do admit that when the distress alarm goes, they just tend to disregard them and ignore it till the end of the watch and end up giving no feedback at all. This is when things get irreversible. It is too late to save a vessel in distress when you go and check the distress print log after the watch. Say, Stella Daisy, which sank within only 5 minutes. By incorporating into the function of the deck officer, we look forward to make the officers acknowledge their responsibility they have and be more alert to distress signals. And hopefully, we'll be able to eradicate the tendency among the officers to disregard the alarms and make them check, respond, and give feedback to whom it may concern. Let me introduce Ms. Hong, who will tell us about the detailed amendment strategy.
let's proceed to detail amendment strategy. Our amendment strategies is comprised of 3 steps. First is about regulation. Second, Code A, and lastly, Code B from the STCW Convention. In the first step, since DAC officer currently perform radio communication duty in requirements of DAC officer, we should delete the related paragraph concerning RR. This implies that duty of radio communication is not according to RR, but according to STCW Convention. The amendment should look something like this. For ships of 500 gross tonnage or more, the paragraph 2.4 in Regulation 2/1 is deleted. Also, for ships of less than 500 GT, the paragraph 4.3 of Regulation 2/1 is also deleted. And now, let's proceed to the next step. The paragraph 1.2 and 3 of Section A2/1 is deleted. It's the same reason of RR, which is the main reason why radio communication is separated from DAC officer's duty. And we consider how to add the function of radio communication into the capacity of DAC officer. The answer is Chapter 4. We make reference to knowledge, understanding, and proficiency table A4/2 when looking at Section A2/1 and 2. Leaving Chapter 4 as it is, we delete the sentence regarding RR and then add the function into the Section A2/1 and 2. After that, we add the radio communication requirements according to SOLAS Chapter 4 Regulation 16, radio personnel. Every ship shall carry any one of whom shall be designated to have primary responsibility hold to GOC. This means that not all DAC officers should hold a GOC. Some of them just need the minimum requirement of which is RC. So in Section A2/1, we add the requirements for RC of O and W. On the other hand, for the master and shipmate, one of them need to hold a GOC according to radio personnel in SOLAS. So in Section A2/2, we add the requirements for GOC. We have taken similar approach for ships of less than 500 GT. The paragraph 1.2 and 3 in Section A2/3 will stipulate the contents from RR is deleted. Moving on, making reference to Chapter 4, the function of radio communication at the operational level, we delete the paragraph concerning RR. The reason is the same as Section A2/1 and 2. And in Section A2/3, we add the 2 requirements for RC for O and W and GOC for master and shipmate. The final step is Code B. Following the step, O and W has to perform the function of radio communication. So, we need to add the paragraph 7.9 radio operation in existing shipboard program of training. Additionally, we add the guidance regarding ROC and GOC in the Section B2/1. After that, we consider Section B2/2 and 3, in which we are asked to refer to the Section B2/1. So, we need to note the sentence, this guidance may be reduced in the case of RC. We propose the integration of radio communication function into the capacity of DAC officer as a 4th function of DAC officer. This proposal is not a consideration, but a necessity. I think we have provided the answer to the question, why shall radio communication be included as a function of DAC officers? Thank you for listening to our presentation.
Thank you, Professor Moon. please.
Thank you, Spirit. As before, I'd like to take questions from the floor, but in the meantime, if assessors would like to make any question, please show me attention so that no, you're not allowed to.
No, this is
Okay, that's right. Sorry. Well, any questions regarding the presentation made by Anchor Spirit? And please raise your hand. It's all about, okay, Professor Schroeder.
There.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. You provided as a justification some arguments with regard to increased safety and said that at the moment individual watch officers wouldn't respond to emergency calls. If you now include the requirement for radio training into the education of the seafarer, I cannot quite see why suddenly somebody should have a different attitude, because it would right now suggest that somebody wouldn't respond simply because they are not encouraged to do so. But would you then also change the curriculum for the radio training so that suddenly they wouldn't feel the need to respond more? Normally, and that's my understanding, is a lot of the alarms are ignored because they are simply too many and they are very often not exactly correct. So I cannot see the point why that would be an increased safety measure.
Thank you, sir, for your good question. For answering to your question, we need to keep in mind that we have to possess a certificate, proficient certificate for radio officer, right? So the COC and GOC is separate. So when we incorporate that into the function of a deck officer, we want to make officers think that it is one of their main jobs to radio communicate. So when you're having a certificate, in your mind, you're thinking that, oh, I can radio communicate. But when you take that into the functions of a deck officer, then the officers will think that we have to radio communicate to avoid to respond to the distress signals they receive. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Thank you.
That clear? Any follow-up question, right? Yes, right.
It's just an observation, maybe. I think it's actually quite the opposite when you have a certificate. I mean, you can, through that additional examination, actually highlight the importance of radio communication much more. At least that's what I felt when I did my radio examination certificate, but that's a couple of years ago. So I see some practical issues with that also, because you also mentioned in terms of efficiency that it would be better to integrate that in the training of the seafarers. But it would probably still require the same person as before, because you would need somebody to explain basically what radio communication is. And so to a certain extent, you just shift it probably. You do not necessarily require a specific examination, you make it a different examination. So I'm not quite sure if it's so efficient, but maybe you can explain that aspect a bit better.
Yes, sir, but at least you can take that different places into one, and we can make examination dates into one day, so we can increase the efficiency for 2B officers. So we have the experience at sea, so and we don't want other 2B officers in the future to experience the same procedures that we have gone through. And I don't practically understand why this procedure, this has been like this for around 25 years, right? And I think this matter should be discussed. This matter should be discussed.
Clear? No more follow-up questions? Okay. Then, yes, the Mary Catcher from the floor.
Yes, thank you for your wonderful presentation. We are Team the Bird Catchers. And my question is that, are there any special reasons that why you proposed amendments only to the deck officers? Because I think in cases of emergency absent of deck officers, I think engineer officers should be able to use GMDSS as well.
Thank you for your question. The SOLAS regulation in the STCW regulation states that there has to be a 24-hour watch for GMDSS. So there always are personnel to watch after the GMDSS signal. And the reason we suggested this only for deck officers is obviously because deck officers need certification for GMDSS, and the examination scheme for engineer officers is incorporated into one already. And the examination scheme for deck officers, only deck officers, is separate into three. So I hope, yeah, that answers your question.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see no hands raised. Okay, Kimo.
Thank you for your speech. I could really sympathize with your presentation. Since you have mentioned that you have sea experience, from what I know, there's a designated deck officer to do GMDSS communication or operation or daily or weekly, monthly basis check. So I don't understand what is the point of amending existing rule regulation to complement or to replace the existing job for the deck officer.
Thank you, sir, for your question. I think your question is the very point we're trying to emphasize. Since there is no more radio officer on board, we are fully aware of the fact that the deck officer with a proficiency certificate is on board, and no radio officers are now on board as the radio officer. So we want to update the STCW commandment and make a fresh, updated version. So it has been going on like this for around 25 years now. So that is the very point we're trying to emphasize. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. More questions? Lifesaver, please.
Thank you. This is Team Lifesaver, and I would like to ask Team Anchor Spirit a question. So your point is that this integration of radio communication tests will make the process of obtaining the certificate more simple, resulting in a more efficient process of obtaining the certificate. But however, if the process of obtaining this certificate becomes more simple, wouldn't this result in a deterioration of radio communication skills?
As previously mentioned by Ms. Song, the training schemes remain the same. The training schemes is not something STCW convention regulates. It's regulated by a totally different regulation under radio regulation. So we are not fixing or editing anything from that radio regulation, but we are moving those schemes from the radio regulation into the STCW convention under knowledge, understanding, and proficiency table, also known as scoop table. So we're not editing anything from radio regulation. So we don't want to worry about deteriorating of radio technology.
Thank you for your great answer.
Thank you. I think I have to stop for this Q&A session on Anchor Spirit's presentation. Thank you, Anchor Spirit.
Thank you.